Imagine it's late at night, you're a doctor at the hospital, you've been working long hours, and you suddenly get paged into the emergency room. You're surrounded by a group of people, some of whom you don't know what their roles are. You're coming up quickly to speed in the situation, and you need to remember the protocols which you've studied, some years ago. What are you going to do? This is a really challenging environment for medical doctors. They face incredible time pressures, especially in emergencies, to do the right thing and to remember all the important steps in the right order. If we look at other fields where they've had successes in making reliable organizations, one of them is aviation. It used to be a very risky, very dangerous way to travel, would be to fly. But through the adoption of techniques such as the use of checklists, they'd be able to standardize how they operate and improve how they work as teams and as individuals. In contrast, medicine has much more to go in the use of checklists and standardizing operations. Here's actually a photo of an aid that a doctor made themselves. They put this on the wall to make sure they don't forget important steps so they can access it when they can. But there's much more we can do to go beyond paper. Paper is great because it's really accessible. People can find the information, but it takes time. It's hard to change. And how do you update this information as protocols change? How do you reach all the hospitals, not only in the US, but across the world, with the best up-to-date medical information? This is the World Health Organization pre-surgery checklists. It seems like a very simple thing, but these simple innovations actually save lots of lives. In studies in the last couple of years, people have shown that even introducing simple checklists reduce infection rates drastically. So this is some work in 2006 where they drastically reduced the infection rates. Atul Gawande has popularized these checklists recently, but there's still a lot more to go. They face cultural issues in terms of adoption. How does it look to pull out a checklist when you're in the middle of a crisis? Does it undermine your authority? Do you think you should know everything, or can you rely on this external memory aid? Here's some of the existing paper aids that they've been developing. While they contain a lot of information, it's still a struggle. In a real crisis, you may put them down. Maybe they're under other things. You may struggle and drop them. So let's go back and look at this situation and imagine, what might we do to improve this using computer technology? What might operating rooms in hospitals look like in 2020? So how this project started was Larry was brave enough to cross this great divide of Campus Drive Loop. So here we are in the Lake Hashing building, and he crossed the Campus Drive from medicine to engineering. So I'm doing my PhD in computer science here with a focus on human-computer interaction for medical. And Larry came to us and brought us some of these problems. He asked us, what can we do to improve healthcare in the future with today's technology? What can we learn from how Silicon Valley and design thinking works? What he introduced to us was one of the main principles that aviation has also popularized. 25 years ago, Dr. David Gaba was an anesthesiologist who happened to also be a pilot. He and his colleagues introduced medical simulation in the form of high-fidelity, realistic mannequins to anesthesia. You can see here on the top left the realistic mannequin. It can breathe, it can talk, it can sweat, the pupils dilate, and it's set up in this entire simulation wing in the basement here. Everything in this is real except for the patient. The gases are real, there's instruments, people can come and you actually scrub in before you go. And on the bottom right, you can see the control room. It's a little bit like being a dungeon master. You're controlling all the environments in this amazing theater. And from us as interaction designers, it's an amazing opportunity. We've had the opportunity not only to watch upwards of 50 hours of simulation and see dozens of doctors tackle the same tasks, but we've had this opportunity to deploy our software in simulation to see how it actually works. So we learned a lot about design yesterday, designing things quickly, building. But one thing that we didn't talk that much about yesterday is the simulation loop. And doing simulation in a way that reduces costs and makes design really iterative, I think, is one of the important things to actually changing how healthcare is practiced in the future, whether it's for low-risk things or really high-risk things, such as the things I'll be talking about today. And it's really this iterative design, build, simulate loop, which I think will hopefully spur innovation in this field. So based on our year's work, talking to the anesthesiologists, watching them, doing participatory designs, we came up with 3 principles grounded in this approach. The first was that we really needed to focus attention. In a crisis environment, there's so many things you need to focus on. If the software, if the interfaces don't try to limit your attention, try to focus on what's really important, they're not going to help you at all. Second, we need to cue based on contexts. Crisis changes really quickly. As the environment changes, you need to show only the information you need at a certain point in time. And finally, we want to reduce barriers to use. Even though checklists seem such like a simple and obvious thing, their adoption has been limited in the US and abroad. And we hope that technology can help reduce some of these barriers by making them more accessible. Imagine if you could design a checklist which could immediately spread out throughout the world as easily as Instagram did. Could you promote medical care on this level in a way that spreads at Silicon Valley scale and speed? So as part of our prototyping process, a lot of these aren't necessarily interactive prototypes, although we did that eventually. We started out with simple paper prototypes. And part of the design process is here empathy with the users as the doctors, understanding what do they care about, when do they care about it. And for us, design was about engaging in a conversation and using these prototypes to do that with them. So here's a shot of our current prototype mounted on a crash cart. This is what gets called in when there's a code blue situation. There's a tablet and a large screen which measures the display. So now we can walk through, and I'll show you a little video which demonstrates how this might work in a simulated crisis environment.
Hey, Kyle, what's going on?
The guy just coded on it.
Yeah? Tell me the story.
I just found him, and I think it's an atypically. You got the milligrams of
Okay, well,
epinephrine?
It looks like this is Mr. Steino. He was bradycardic. It looks like they tried transcutaneous pacing. It didn't work. Kyle, have you guys given epinephrine yet?
We just gave a milligram of epinephrine. Yeah.
Okay. Well, it looks like it's not time to redose for another couple minutes. Have you done a have you done a rhythm check?
No, not yet.
Okay, guys, let's stop CPR just so we can do a rhythm check. Okay, that looks like ventricular fibrillation. Kyle, let's get ready to defibrillate. Continue decompression. All right. And continue mass ventilation.
Yeah, defibrillate. Everyone clear. All right.
Okay, continue CPR.
So let's look through this software-based aid and see what it actually supports for the doctors. On the top right, we have information where doctors can access services. They can call for help. They can get an EKG. But there's also information about people in the room. Some of the most important resources that doctors have during a crisis are the other people. There's this kind of difference between asking for hands help to do something and heads help to think through their problems. So here, we're telling them who's in the room, what are their names, what are their roles. You may be working with people that you haven't met before or haven't worked with. In the bottom right, we're displaying patient information where we can update it with up-to-date information on new, let's say, blood gas results. One of the key principles here, again, is to adapt for this limited amount of attention. Instead of displaying poster-sized images or everything you could display, we want to limit it for a limited amount of pixels on screen. Let's see how this adaptation actually works. Here's the main dispatch screen. For now, we're focusing on advanced cardiac life support. They can select VFib, and it progresses to the next screen. It cues them as to what's the important things to do next. High-quality chest compressions at least 100 compressions per minute, rotating chest compressors. Next, they go to treatment. You'll see here that the next steps are de-emphasized until you click them. Here we, again, de-emphasize previous steps and focus on the current steps, the current loop. Defibrillate 200 joules. Resume CPR immediately. As operation proceeds, we continually update with only information you want to see now. Here, you're seeing the drug timing. This is something where software can really help and automate the procedure. You can see how many times have you dosed epinephrine. When was the last time you dosed? Can you redose again? The large screen display supports team performance so that everyone knows what's going on. Do you even think that's the same diagnosis? Do you know what's been going on? And finally, by supporting mirrored operation, we can synchronize views across displays. So when a doctor or nurse operates the tablet, other people can see it on the same screen. You can ask this question, does this actually work? Is this a useful intervention? And how do we rapidly get feedback about software for emergency response? We don't want to spend years and billions of dollars building the system and deploying it to see if it's actually useful. This is part of the lower fidelity simulation which we built. It's a screen-based slide simulation where it prompts and asks people about what to do next. The slides automatically advance and ask them what might they do next. We did a laboratory study where these slides were part of the simulated cardiac life support scenario. On the left, you see the scenario slides, and on the right, we had the cognitive aid. To simulate the stresses of surgery and crisis, we had a dual task where they had to attend to and press a button on the right. We found that we ran a study of about 37 doctors, and about a third of the time, they didn't give quite the right response. Maybe it was the wrong dosage or the wrong joules. Maybe they didn't immediately resume CPR or give the right compression rates. But you think about it, there's so much better we can do than having a 30% error rate in terms of responses for something that all doctors should know. We tried some of the paper aids, and they didn't do that much better. With our system, we did between 8 and 16% better. In some scenarios, we actually have the error rates, and we think this is incredible given the minimal amount of training that they had. If you think about what operating rooms and hospitals of the future might look like, you can imagine these large screen displays on the wall, making sure everyone knows what's going on. You can imagine crash carts, we call this Crash Cart 2.0, where you have mounted displays and tablets, making sure people stay up to speed. But you can also imagine, what do people do with their cell phones? Are they accessing information, which we've actually seen people do in our simulations? Do they have other kind of augmented displays, maybe some sort of glasses? We believe that with technology such as this, we can adapt information to doctors when they need it. And we have technologies that can adapt to different rendering styles and different rendering sizes. With that, I'd like to thank you all and hope that you can work together to bring simulation design and prototyping to medical culture and see how we can do to improve medical care in the 21st century. Thank you.
Thank you.